Hello, welcome to my channel. For those of you who do not know, my name is Ozzy, and for those of you returning, welcome back. I'm gonna do a video essay. I haven't done one of these in a minute, so hopefully this makes sense. The topic is basically the commodification of aesthetics. So it's like the aesthetic marketplace, how fashion turns beauty into capital. I'm just gonna be reading off my laptop. So the concept of commodification can be broken down like this. Commodities are defined as raw materials used to manufacture consumer products. But commodification is the action or process of treating something as a mere commodity. Now the concept of commodification can be explained by its key characteristics such as historical context, examples in specific fields, the impact it has, the critiques it faces, and the contemporary relevance of today within the digital age and in the fashion industry. How has the fashion industry transformed personal and cultural aesthetics into marketable commodities? The evolution of fashion has a long and interesting history. In earlier times, fabrics such as cotton and silk were crafted and woven by hand, which of course was very time-consuming, labor-intensive, and required a lot of skills. Then came the textile manufacturing that started the development of the techniques and technologies to process the fibers from plants and animals into fabrics. The first technological advances in the textile industry focused on the process and the creation of the textile fibers. The processing tools made of wood or bone were used to comb, braid, or cut fibers into yarn that was then turned into fabric to create the clothing. This process too was very time consuming. This had encouraged people to learn how to spin, which helped create yarn in a shorter amount of time. This sprung the invention of the first spinning wheel that was invented in India, then inspired the semi-automatic spinning machines, then the spinning jenny to the power loom, and so on and so forth, and then ultimately introducing the steam energy and the sewing machine. Because of these developments within technology during the first industrial revolution, the textile industry had garnered unprecedented productivity and agility, which increased production, making it possible to create copies of clothing numerous times. Over time, there had been technological advances of machinery, too many to count from, that have revolutionized the fashion industry. Most of them were related to fiber extraction and processing, including fabric manufacturing and sewing machines. This had made mass production become feasible in turn, making it so that the fashion industry is a powerful global industry. The start of mass production seems to be the catalyst event for the future of fashion. The advancement of merchandise textile manufacturing had given the room to create a large amount of clothing at a lower cost, which in turn made fashion more accessible. The democratization of fashion opened doors to new social classes such as the middle class. The rise of department stores and clothes that were made ready to wear had made fashion a commodity and no longer a privilege that used to be reserved for higher classes. This changed the way consumers act and also created a culture for consumers. This is where people started to relate who they were and their status to their clothing choices. The fashion industry started to boom, giving life to designers and brands that have shaped the future of fashion. The rise of fast fashion making trendy clothing accessible more than ever, causing conversations about ethical consumption and the impact it's having on the environment. Fashion is no longer just about clothing. Nowadays, it involves complex interplay of identity, culture, and societal values. Social media has changed the way fashion trends and styles are marketed and consumed, letting more participation and influence from consumers. Consumers who are constantly following and watching what the newest fashion trends are feel the pressure to keep up with the expectations. Social media has increased this need for validation, allowing fashion to play a role in one's online persona. Social comparison believes that people determine their own worth socially and personally based on how they fare against others, comparing outfits of influencers to theirs and not feeling that they were up to par, leaving them feeling inadequate. This starts to foster some sense of competition and makes them feel the need to get new clothes and accessories to maintain a certain image or status. Social media platforms have increased the globalization of fashion. Platforms have become important tools for fashion influencers and brands to show off their clothing and reach an audience on a global level. With the ability ability to share images and videos quickly gives trends the opportunity to spread rapidly, breaking geographical boundaries. With the democratization of fashion, consumers are now able to feel empowered to take part in the conversation surrounding fashion. Speaking on the rise of microtrends that seems to be popping up in every corner of the world, usually driven by grassroots movements versus traditional fashion houses, influencer culture has come into the scene where people who have a following set the trends and dictate what's considered trendy and fashionable, leading to a heightened sense of pressure for others to conform to the trends pushed by influencers at the expense of their own unique style. With social media, there is now instant gratification that can intensify the cycle of consumption. Having access to buy things that are online can often lead to impulse buying behaviors where others will look to copy styles that they see online, in turn creating a paradox where even though they have access to numerous clothing items, they might still feel unhappy with their own clothing choices, continuing the cycle of consumption that is driven by the need of validation from others. With the rise of digital technologies and social media use, it has transformed the way cultural aesthetics are commodified. The risk of appropriation is a big deal when elements of marginalized cultures can be commodified without proper acknowledgement or respect. Fashion brands need to make sure they are carefully ensuring that they engage with cultures in a way that is respectful and mutually beneficial to all parties involved. The fine line of cultural appreciation and exploitation can be something to easily avoid. It's important to immerse oneself in culture that they would like to partake in. When high fashion brands go in and incorporate traditional patterns or garments from marginalized cultures, failing to credit the source of inspiration or even doing the bare minimum of understanding the importance and significance of the cultural elements, it's exploitive. With fast fashion on the rise, making clothing that's trendy more accessible than ever, conversations on ethical consumption and environmental impact are brought up. Fast fashion brands have revolutionized the industry by quickly turning runway trends to affordable clothing available to the masses. The new model has democratized fashion and made accessibility to a broader audience, while also creating a culture of disposability where buyers get clothing with little to no regard for their longevity or quality. The environmental consequences that come with fast fashion are scary and have numerous variables. The industry is responsible for a significant percentage of global carbon emission, water usage, and textile waste. The responses to combat these issues would be the increasing movement of sustainable fashion. Consumers are more than ever aware of the impact their purchasing patterns have on our earth, which leads to demanding transparency and ethical practices within fashion. Consumers are holding brands accountable for their impacts their businesses are having on the environment, encouraging sustainable practices such as organic materials, reducing waste, and making sure fair labor conditions are enacted. There are initiatives like the Fashion Pact that bring different stakeholders within the fashion industry to commit to the environmental goals. Due to consumer awareness now on the rise, there is a demand for ethical fashion which reshapes the industry. Buyers are inclined to support brands and businesses that prioritize sustainability, ethical labor practices, and transparency when it comes to supply chains. We see this being evident with the rise of secondhand shopping, renting clothes, and brands that use upcycled materials. The challenges that fast fashion bring make it necessary that a reevaluation of practices with fashion should be made. Consumers are being more aware and educated on this topic. There is an increase in weighting accountability, and the future of fashion seems to be capable of incorporating these changes that will ultimately lead to a more sustainable and ethical industry. The concept of self-identity is closely linked to fashion choices. Clothing is used as a way to express or showcase someone's personality, belief, and social affiliation. The relationship between one's identity and fashion is multifaceted and profound. Yes, clothing is a practical necessity, but it can also be seen as a canvas for self-expression. People will choose their outfits based on different factors like cultural background, personal experiences, and emotional states, so on and so forth. Fashion becomes a major tool for self-representation. Fashion can serve as a form of communication, for there are ways people dress and they can be seen as a signal to their belonging to a certain group or subculture. These choices can foster a sense of community and belonging by finding others who have a similar value and taste. This part of fashion showcases the role within social identity theory. People derive part of their self-concept from their group members, meaning that clothing that one wears can state loyalty to a certain lifestyle or ideology. This just reinstates that the idea that fashion isn't just about aesthetics or trends, but it's about identity formation. As time went on and fashion continued to evolve into the late 20th century, this was when subcultures were on the rise. Punk, goth, and hip-hop groups had changed traditional fashion norms and embraced individuality. Because of the rise of subcultures, designers took inspiration from cultural groups, which allowed the fashion landscape to be globalized. With technological advances and the rise of fast fashion, diluted self-identity or personal style, making it much more difficult to come by because consumers are buying the same things, being influenced by the same people, and shopping at the same places. While fashion is meant to be a tool for self-expression, identity, and empowerment, it still has its challenges in the context of social comparison and the influence from social media. As we reflect on the commodification of fashion, it's clear that the industry has evolved from a space of craftsmanship to a highly globalized, fast-paced market where trends are mass-produced and rapidly consumed. This transformation raises important questions about the future of fashion. In a world where aesthetics are commodified, can true self-expression still exist, or are we merely replicating what we see online? What would it mean to reclaim fashion as a form of art, one that prioritizes creativity and personal identity over consumption? The rise of fast fashion and influence of social media have undoubtedly democratized fashion, but they have also created a culture of disposability and comparison. While fashion can empower and express identity, it can also lead us to question our authenticity and values in a world driven by trends and validation. So I encourage us to think about our own fashion choices. Are they a reflection of who we are, or are they shaped by the pressures of a commodified world? As we move forward, how can we ensure that fashion becomes more than just a product to be sold, but a platform for self-expression and meaningful cultural dialogue? Thank you for watching my video. That was the end of it. Please let me know your thoughts. I do hope it made sense. I do have other videos where I talk about like topics like that, so you should check it out if you are interested. But I really do appreciate it if you stuck to the end. You're very real. Do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see y'all next time.